I'm Katie Parla, a Rome-based food and beverage writer, culinary guide, and cookbook author. I'm also the co-host of the Gola podcast about Italian food and culture. And for the past 20 years, I've devoted my life to documenting the food and beverages of the Italian South and the Italian capital. Roman cuisine is an assembly of dishes, ingredients. It's an approach to cooking and thinking about food that has developed over the course of 2,000 years. Rome is the Italian capital, and it has more than 4 million people living in its metro area. Most of those people are not native to Rome. They've come from other parts of Italy and other parts of the world, gloriously contaminating the local food culture with their own cooking techniques, ingredients, and approaches. And so Rome, while it does celebrate its native produce, there are also fantastic dishes that have developed due to migration, trade, and various economic periods. During this course, we're going to break down the history of food in Rome, starting in antiquity, so just like a light dip into the Iron Age, and then roll right through the 21st century to dissect what Romans eat today and how they approach food spaces. We'll discuss ingredients and recipes, and you'll walk away with a deeper understanding, not just of Rome and its food, but also of Romans. Once we've waded through the history, ingredients, and food spaces, I'm going to teach you 5 recipes that illuminate universal facts about Roman dining. We're now in the 21st century, not just in life, but in this chapter. And it might not seem like an historical Roman period, but over the past 2 decades, I've observed the city's food in evolution, and drinks as well. So think about what's happened since the year 2000. The lira, the Italian currency, transitioned to the euro. The financial crisis hit hard, and both of these economic factors played a big part in Roman finances. People's disposable incomes shifted and diminished. Youth unemployment, which has typically been a feature of these economic crises, has put additional pressure on families to support their adult children. And so that has created a necessity for shifting consumption patterns. People spend less on food, they go out less frequently, but that doesn't mean they're willing to give up on flavor. And so many successful businesses have emerged in order to give people affordable options that are rooted in Roman flavors. In 2009, Stefano Caligari invented what, for lack of a better translation, is a pizza pita. Now, stay with me. At a small, hole-in-the-wall pizza by the slice shop, Stefano Caligari was making pizza in teglia. This is a sheet pan pizza style that we'll talk about in a future chapter. And he was uninspired. He was doing pretty well. There was an audience for what he was baking, but he wanted to do something a little bit more creative. So he started baking these square sourdough buns, slicing them diagonally to create triangular pieces, which he would then slice open to form a pita and then stuff with Roman mains, transforming dishes like chicken cacciatore, tripe Roman style, which I'm going to make for you at the end. The eggplant parm that's so popular all over the peninsula, and making these dishes that previously you would have to sit down to eat into portable, fast, and above all, cheap meals for Romans. And it was such a hit. He later shuttered his pizza by the slice joint and created a new space called trapizzino. Stefano Caligari's new invention, the trapizzino, is an invented word. It's a mashup of 2 Italian words. Tramezzino, which is a white bread sandwich with the crust cut off. You can find them in every bar in the city. And pizza, which is the type of dough that's used to make this invention. When you merge tramezzino and pizza, you get trapizzino, registered trademark. This has been such a popular invention that over the past decade since its invention, the trapizzino has popped up all over the city, in fact, all over Italy. And you can find locations in Trastevere, in the train station, at the stadium, and even abroad. It's a clever, portable, cheap, thoughtful food that takes Roman flavors and just simply reimagines them in a new packaging without being unnecessarily modernist about it. And that's why it makes sense in Rome. There are other classic fast foods that have seen a true evolution in the past 2 decades. Take pizza by the slice, especially the pizza in teglia or sheet pan style of pizza. People like Gabriele Bonci have transformed a humble street food into a gourmet art, and the crispy and chewy bases that he bakes at Pizzarium near the Vatican and at his bakery, Panificio Bonci nearby, are vehicles for gourmet toppings sourced from farms and delis serving the finest cheeses and cured meats. And so with this push towards a more sophisticated approach at sourcing ingredients, Gabriele Bonci and colleagues who have followed him have created food of the utmost quality, but in a form that everyone can understand. Pizza, a universally enjoyable food. And they haven't stopped at pizza. Stefano Caligari, Gabriele Bonci, Sarah Ciccolini have all elevated the food traditions of Rome. So probably the most famous fried snack in town is the supli. It's an egg-shaped parcel made of rice that's been cooked in a tomato meat sauce, cooled so it's able to be handled, and then packed around a mozzarella heart. It's then breaded and fried until the mozzarella heart melts so that when you break it open, you get this nice cheese pull. For about 100 years, supli was just one thing. You didn't even have to order a supli classico when you went out. You just said supli, and that's what you got. Now you've got to be specific because people like Stefano Caligari, Gabriele Bonci, and Sarah Ciccolini are playing with the fried food category. At Pizzarium, you'll find spaghetti alla carbonara turned into supli. Stefano Caligari's Trapezzino serves tortellini-inspired supli. And Rome's famous oxtail ingredient is turned into the most luscious croquette by Sarah Ciccolini at her trattoria, Santo Palato. Sarah Ciccolini's cooking falls into a category that's perhaps better described as a neo-trattoria rather than a trattoria. Trattoria feels historic in a way. It feels rooted in traditions. It feels not quite trapped in amber, but committed to dutifully reproducing established recipes. At Santo Palato, Sarah Ciccolini, a young chef, is creative with what she does, but she's always drawing on inspiration from local sources for dishes like the chicken gizzard frittata, which merges the beloved frittata and chicken gizzards, a popular pasta condiment. By merging flavors that are already present in the culture, Sarah Ciccolini and her colleagues are gently nudging tradition forward without subverting the important culinary traditions of the city. And as we've seen for 3,000 years, Rome's ingredients and recipes have always been in a state of evolution, slowly changing to satisfy Roman palates. There's no doubt that if you visit Rome, you're going to encounter plenty of tradition, things that feel like they've been dutifully reproduced day in and day out for centuries. But in reality, the food on Roman tables is mostly informed by 20th century traditions. And what's important about this is it's an acknowledgement that while Rome's ingredients and some techniques might be rooted in millennial history, the city's cuisine has always been evolving. The combinations of things might be reimagined in some spaces, but you'll still find guanciale, pecorino, salt, black pepper, certain types of fish, meat, plenty of offal, all the pillars that form the foundational elements of the Cucina Romana. And Romans are not impervious to change. The financial crisis of '09 forced many Romans to go abroad, and what they encountered were Italian cocktails, craft beer, all sorts of Italian flavors that had been reimagined by people abroad. And inspired by these things, people repatriated and created new businesses, reflecting a newfound appreciation for things that had been taken for granted earlier. So Rome today is serving some of the greatest food and drink that it ever has, because we have that super traditional trattoria food. We have that formal ristorante food. We have the neo-trattoria, which is embracing evolution without being forced into a sense of modernity. And then the great wine bars of the city have now been enriched with small batch traditional wines from natural producers who are favoring low intervention. You can also visit craft cocktail bars, which over the past decade have grown from a small few to true critical mass. And Italian liqueurs and spirits are on the menu alongside international ones, showing that Italian craft cocktails are just as valid as anywhere. When I moved to Rome in 2003, I was instantly intrigued by food and drink. I thought I would enter a city that was deeply traditional, eager to keep its recipes trapped in amber. But instead what I saw was a place ready for change, open to evolution, just as Rome, in a way, always has been. We don't eat what Romulus would have eaten. We don't consume the dishes of Pope Paul IV Carafa. We are eating what is a wonderful contamination of history and modern economics, all coalescing on the Roman table. And this is what I've been documenting for the past 2 decades. When I started writing about food in Rome, I thought, I have an archaeology background. I'm only going to think about antiquity. But the more time I spent at the table, the more I felt like I was an archaeologist, discovering the way that Romans were transitioning their food for 21st century needs. So I started writing about food in magazines, newspapers, ultimately writing a book called Tasting Rome about how Romans eat in the 21st century, acknowledging traditions, preserving recipes, but also documenting things like Gabriele Bonci's pizza recipe that had never been written down before. And through the 85 recipes in that book, I painted a picture of how Romans eat today and where they've come from. Tasting Rome and the vast trove of articles that preceded it were really aimed at connecting what we eat in Rome today with the past, and how every recipe in the book is either from an historical tradition or part of the natural evolution of cuisine. When Gabriele Bonci first started making what you might call third wave pizza, a base that is the product of meticulously sourced flour from heirloom wheat, dough that is fermented through a long, slow, cold process, Rome wasn't ready for him. 20 years ago, the city was still really deeply entrenched in its traditions, unaccepting of a pizza that might have foie gras and walnuts and honey on top. Now, after 2 decades of eating his pizza and 2 decades of Gabriele Bonci experimenting, I think it's safe to say that the people of Rome have now embraced his style.